All right, today we are studying the story of David and Goliath, one of the probably favorite stories growing up as a child. Probably even today, I think a lot of us enjoy this story of David and Goliath. And so today I've entitled it Champion, and what I want to do is I'm just going to do my best to kind of go through this chapter. It's 1 Samuel 17. And so I'm just going to try to go through this chapter and just kind of explain what's going, just kind of do a little bit of storytelling, really. And then hopefully at the end, we can kind of start discussing some things that might be powerful and meaningful for us. So just to give you a little bit of backdrop, the king at this time was Saul. Saul was king. He was the first anointed king of Israel because Israelites decided they want to be like all the other countries and all around the world. They wanted to have a king. And so, reluctantly, instead of following after God, they kept on pressing that they wanted a king. So, Saul was anointed king. Now, Saul, he stood head and shoulders above all the rest of the Israelites. He was the man's man. He was the warrior. He was the ideal person to be that king. And so, he was brought up to be that leader, but through his kingship, shortly into it, he started making mistakes. He started doing things that he wasn't supposed to be doing. He offered up some sacrifices that he wasn't supposed to be doing. He made some decisions in battle and war and did not destroy everything that he was supposed to destroy. And therefore, he was a disobedient king. He disobeyed God and the things that God wanted him to do. And because of this, his kingdom would be taken away from him. He would no longer be the king of Israel. And so at this point, right before this, in chapter 16, we have Samuel has to go out and find the new king that God is directing him to. And so he tells him to go to Jesse. And Jesse had 8 sons. And of those 8 sons, of course, you would think the oldest, the biggest, the strongest would be the one that would be the next anointed king. Of course, we know the story that it was David who was still out in the field, the little shepherd boy, tending the flock. Matter of fact, he wasn't even invited to the party, to talk. They had to go get him out of the field and say, oh, well, I do have one last son. Here he is. And that is who God wanted to be anointed as the next king. And so Samuel anoints David to be the next king. And then guess what? David goes back to doing what he's supposed to be doing. He went back to serving as a little shepherd boy for his father, obeying his father. Also during this time, he was a very accomplished musician. And so because of Saul's disobedience to God, he was having a troubling spirit that came around him, and it was suggested to him to have someone come and play music to him to soothe him. And so someone said, hey, you know what? I know this musician who is just very talented, and so why don't we call him to come and play for you to soothe you during that time? So David finds himself now with the opportunity to be in the presence of King Saul, and he plays his heart for him. He plays music for him to soothe him. And then he also travels back and forth and continues to do and be obedient to his father, being a shepherd in Bethlehem. So that kind of gets us caught up. Now, this whole time, the problem that Saul had and a lot of his disobedience came is while he was fighting the Philistines. It's while he was supposed to be battling these guys. And matter of fact, these guys were supposed to be casted out of the nation years and years and years and years ago. It was given, the promised land was given to the Israelites, and God told them to rid the land of all these people, including these Philistines, but for some reason, over years and years, they had not still got rid of them. And so here we find ourselves in chapter 17, that once again, they're lined up in battle against the Philistines. And so we have the Philistines on one side of this valley, Elah, the valley of Elah. So you had the Philistines on this side, and you had Israel on this other side, and they're chanting and they're yelling and they're getting ready for a battle. And it's this chapter. I like how it I guess it wants you to get you involved in the story. And so it almost sets it up either like a great epic movie that we would be interested in, or like a sporting event almost. And at the very beginning of it, it brings out the challenger. It brings out Goliath. And it's as if they're saying like, okay, in this corner we have Goliath weighing at 400, 500, 600 pounds of pure muscle. And then after it describes him, it's going to describe David, his challenger. And so it has this kind of like epic deal where it's going to give us a little brief preview of both. So looking at that, I want to just read some of this information about Goliath. So in verse 3, it says, the Philistines stood on one side of the mountain, while on the other side, Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And then it said that a champion came from the armies of the Philistine named Goliath from Gath. Now, the champion, that word champion is interesting. It's ish, it means man, but it means a man to be in between. It's to have a champion, to have this means to someone who would come in between for you, to be the in-between man. And that's what it's really referring to right here, is that we're fixing to have Goliath call out the nation and say, hey, you send a guy, and I'm going to come, and we're going to be the in-between guys. We're going to decide it for the nation who wins. And so it means the in-between, the man in between. So this champion came out from the armies of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, which is roughly 9 feet, 9 inches. And he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed in scaled armor, which weighed, says 500 shekels of bronze, which was about 125 pounds. Then it also talks about, the rest of his armor. It talks about his spear was a weaver's beam. And as a matter of fact, I have a picture of that. This is a replica, of course, but a weaver's beam, and just the tip of this spear weighed about 15 pounds. And I was trying to think about if you've ever swung a sledgehammer, a 15-pound sledgehammer. It's like putting the tip of a sledgehammer on a long stick, and think about trying to throw that. Or if you can't relate to a sledgehammer, if you've ever been bowling and you get the heaviest ball at the bowling alley is about a 15-pound bowling ball, put that on the tip of a stick and try throwing it far. So this is how it's painting this picture of how big and massive it is. And so I really wanted us to have even a better visual of what that might be. And so I was thinking, who is the biggest person, most menacing, most scariest person in our church that I think could kind of give us a picture of Goliath? And so I'm going to have him come up right now and now, granted, that's pretty scary, right? But thankfully, I also brought this ladder here, and I'm going to have him climb this ladder. Now, this right here is about 2.5, 3 feet. And see how big and menacing he is? Guess what? Goliath was taller than that. Because he's what? You're 5'6", 6'6", but yeah, he's 5'6". You add a couple more feet, that's still only 8 feet. We're only 8 feet, and we're talking Goliath was 9 foot 9 inches. So, raise your hand as far as you can. Here, I'll hold you. And that might touch the top of his, maybe touch the top of his chin or something like that. But anyway, Goliath was a big guy. Now you can go ahead and get down. Thank you, sir. Thank you for not hurting me. But, so now, if you can imagine Goliath standing towering taller than that, and you got to think, if he's that tall, he's also big, wide, strong, full of muscle. He's carrying 125 pounds of armor, not just, across the street. This is what he marched in for miles and miles. This was his military array, and then he carried his javelin, he carried a sword, he had all this stuff that was extremely heavy, and apparently it wasn't that big of a deal for him because he was so huge, he was so massive and so big and strong. And so, quite an intimidating picture, this huge giant. And so he comes down, and he says, he goes, "Why do you come out to up in battle array? Am I not a Philistine, and you are the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him, then you shall become my servants." our servants, and serve us. Again, the Philistines said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And then it says in verse 11, when Saul and all of Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed, or the word is terrified, and greatly afraid. And so this giant comes out, and he lays down the ultimatum. He lays down and says, hey, let's battle, you and me, the champion. And who was their champion? Who was the one who stood head and shoulders above everyone else in Israel? Saul, the king. He's calling out the king. He's saying, come on, if you're such a big man, come out here. But what it says is that Saul and all the army, they were terrified. They were greatly afraid. You know, that's looking into the eyes, seeing this huge, massive giant. It had to be intimidating. It had to be pretty scary. When you think about your own strength and your own power and your own might, it's terrifying. And Saul finds himself out of the walk with God. And he finds himself gripped with fear. And he's terrified. And when the leadership is terrified, so is all the men. Now, we go from this side of the ring, and it's like we turn and we go to the other side of the ring. It's like, all right, now, since the champion that should be the champion is not stepping up, who is our champion? Who is the one that's going to fight Goliath? And so in verse 12, it goes, now David was the son of an Ephraite from Bethlehem in Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. Now Jesse was old in the days of Saul. Now his 3 older sons, they were out at war. They were with Saul. They were on the battlefield. But his youngest, being David, the youngest, well, he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was taking care of the sheep. It says that in verse 15, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's flock at Bethlehem. Remember, he was playing music for Saul whenever he was tormented. But when he wasn't doing that, he was taking care of his flock like he was supposed to for his dad. In verse 16, it's interesting. It says, the Philistines came forward morning and evening for 40 days. So this Philistine, Goliath of Gath, came forward morning and evening for 40 days and took his stand. And he defied the armies of Israel. Man, 40 days. So the whole army's been out. They've been fighting, supposed to be out there fighting the Philistines. And for 40 days, this giant has been coming out and taunting them and accusing them and saying, hey, come on, bring me someone to fight me. Come on. And this is what's going on. So naturally, David's dad's probably like, hey, what's going on with my boys? I got 3 boys out there. My oldest boys are out there in this battle. They're supposed to be fighting the Philistines. And so he tells his son, David, he goes, I want you to take some grain. I want you to take some cheese. And I want you to go and check on your brothers. Go to the commander of the thousands, basically go to their platoon, their unit, whatever it was, and he goes, check on your brothers, and then bring back word to me how things are going, what's going on. And so it says that David the next day, he got up early in the morning. He left the flock with a keeper, and he took all his supplies. He took all the cheese and grain and all this kind of stuff, and he goes to the battlefield. He goes to this valley, to where they were at. And so it says that, and he came to the circle of the camp while the army was going out in battle array, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up in battle array, army against army. So, you got to get this. This has been going on for 40 days. That this Goliath has been coming to them. And David comes there and he gets to witness what a typical day on the battlefield looks like. And so while he's there, it says that they came out in battle array. So they came out with all their armor. They came out with their swords, their spears, and all their stuff. And it said that they gave a war cry. Ah! we're going to get you. And they draw up to the battle line. They run up to the battle line. And the Philistines run up to their battle line. And they're screaming, and they're screaming. And they're going back and forth. And there's all this yelling and screaming. And like, we're going to have a battle. We're going to fight. And then Goliath would come out. And once Goliath came out, all these guys would turn around and they run off all scared. 40 days. Does that sound like much of a battle? And I find it interesting that, this is what it says. It says that when Jesse was talking to David, he says, go check on your brother and give me word, because he goes, Saul and them, talking about his brothers, and all of Israel are fighting the Philistines. They haven't fought yet. They were supposed to be fighting, but they haven't fought yet. So 40 days, every day, they got up, war cry, we got this, yeah, we're gonna beat you up. It's just all words. And then it's like Goliath comes, scared, running away. Well, so when David gets there, he sees this. And it says that as he was talking with these soldiers, he says, behold, the champion of the Philistines from Gath, named Goliath, was coming up from the army. And he said he spoke the same words that he had spoke all these other times. He's saying, I defy the armies of Israel. He says, bring out a man, bring out your champion to fight me. And it's almost as if you have this wide shot and you're looking at Goliath, you're hearing Goliath speak, and then all of a sudden the camera whips around and it zooms in on David, and David's like, what did you say? It's like he has this, David heard him. I think it's significant that it says that. It says, the Philistines spoke these words, his same words, and then David heard him. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. And it says when the men of Israel saw this man, they fled from him. They were greatly afraid. And so, we have the picture of them drawn up, and now they're, running scared to death of Goliath. They're running in fear. And I can just imagine David standing there, and these soldiers, man, they're just running past him, and he's going, what's going on? We're the army of God. We are the people of God. These people are Philistines. They don't belong here. This is our land. And he's standing there. And matter of fact, the soldiers must have been perplexed, because it says that as they were running by him, let me find that again. It says, when the men of Israel saw that the man, they fled from him, were greatly afraid. It says, then the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he is coming up to defy Israel. And it says that, and it will be that the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and he will give his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. And so here's David standing there, and they're running by him, scared to death, and they're like, have you not seen him? Do you not get the picture? Because they can't understand why he's just standing there, why he's not afraid, why he's not scared. And he can't figure out why they're running. There's this contradiction going on. He's like, what's going on? And they're like, look, he's going to defy, he's going to destroy Israel and stuff like that. We're scared, we're running from him. But man, he goes, if somebody would be willing to kill him, then man, they're going to get rich. They're going to get the daughter of the king. And matter of fact, your whole family, your taxes would be paid for life. And so David's like, wait a minute, whoa. What did you say? Tell me this again. And so it says, then David spoke to the men who were standing there by him, saying, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should taunt the armies of the living God? The people answered him, just like the words that they said before. And thus it will be said, or be done for him. And so here's David's like, he's just verifying. He's making sure. He's like, okay, so y'all are running from this guy. Even though he's an uncircumcised Philistine, and he's defying God, and we're to defeat him. But also, so there's all kinds of riches, which this kind of tells us another aspect of it, is that how scary it must have been for these Israelites. Because you would think amongst all the army, there'd be some crazy fool out there that would go, ooh, I get a lot of money and get to marry this daughter and don't have to pay taxes ever? Yeah! But it was such a scary thing that there was not one soldier, not even a crazy lunatic in the bunch of them that said, hey, yeah, I'll take that bet. They're all scared. They're all running. Now, then we get a picture of Elab. This is his oldest brother. And it says that Elab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to these men. And his anger burned against David. Now, you got to think, he's kind of ticked off about his little brother anyway. He's like, he just got anointed king. I'm the oldest. I should be the next anointed king. But he knows that Samuel anointed him. Instead of being happy for his brother, supporting his brother, he's like, oh, here he is. Ooh, the anointed king. He is here. So he hears him talking, saying, why don't y'all do what God has called us to do? Why are you letting this uncircumcised Philistine get away with blaspheming God and the armies of God? And so he's saying these things, and I think Elab's over here going, oh, man, David's fixing to do it. David's fixing to go kick this giant's butt, and I got to shut him down before he does because he's already got a big enough ego. And that's the deal, because he's jealous, I think. I think there's some jealousy going there. His anger burned against David. And so then he looks at ways to criticize him, to put him down. He says, right after that, he says, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? Basically, he's saying, he goes, you have neglected your duties. You left the sheep out in the field. And matter of fact, you know what? You're such a pathetic little shepherd boy that it's just a few sheep, and you're neglecting even the few sheep. He's belittling him. He's saying that, one, you're a worthless worker. You're not doing what you're supposed to do, but also your work is pretty puny anyway. You just take care of a few sheep. And then he says, he starts attacking his character. He says, I know your insolence and your wicked heart. He goes, for you came down basically to watch the battle. You came down for a show. And so he's attacking David's character. He's belittling him. He's trying to discourage him. There was greatness in David and stuff like that. And what he was trying to do was like, you know what? I can't let this happen. He's already taken out. He's an anointed king. And I'm going to discourage him. You know, sometimes some of the greatest discouragement that we face as Christians is usually by brothers and sisters in Christ. A lot of times when we're trying to do something for God and we're focused on God and we're trying to do what is right and we're trying to press forward and we're trying to be courageous and do what God has called us to do, oftentimes it's those within the church that actually holds us back, who criticize us, who put us down, who tries to dampen the spirit so that they don't feel so cowardly. But I love how David responds. But David said, what have I done now? It was just a question. I love how he's saying, he doesn't even really entertain his brother. He goes, what have I done now? He goes, it was just a question. And then it says he turns away. He didn't enter into a conversation, an argument, or anything with his brother. He goes, I have better things to do. I have an agenda. I have a vision, a goal. I have something. I have a purpose. And I cannot let your negativity distract me from that purpose. And so he says, what have I done now? It was just a question. And he turns away from him, and he asks some other soldiers around him just to confirm once again who Goliath was, what the situation was, what was the rewards for what was going to happen. And he goes, okay. And when the word got back to Saul that, hey, there's this little guy, David, who is saying these things, that, hey, we need to take care of this uncircumcised Philistine, Saul calls for David to come to him. So David comes to him, and he says, let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. Then Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth. while he has been a warrior from his youth. Once again, we have now Saul discouraging him. Once again, the leader of the army of God discouraging from his purpose. But you know what? David doesn't let that deter him. Matter of fact, he answers Saul and he goes, your servant, he watches over his father's cute, furry little animals. Is that pretty persuasive? Hey, let me go fight this big giant because I tend little furry, fluffy animals that are really cute. And probably not the most impressive thing with that to Saul, but he follows it up very quickly with, hey, when a lion or a bear came and took one of these little lambs, he goes, I went after it. I think it's interesting that the shepherd king here, the shepherd king would leave the 99 to go after the one. Interesting, huh? That he would chase after. So he says, a lion and a bear would come. He goes, I would chase after them. And he goes, and I would pursue them, and I would take that lamb from its mouth. And then he said, so I seized him by his beard, I struck him, and I killed him. Your servant has killed both lion and bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord will deliver me from the paw of the lion, has delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, and he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. You know, as his focus is always on what God was going to do. It wasn't by his strength or his might, though God had used him to kill lions and bears like that, but he even gave God the glory in that. God was the one who protected him. God was going to protect him in this battle. And so Saul said to David, go and may the Lord be with you. And then Saul's like, oh, well, I guess I should give you something. He's like, here, put on my armor. And once again, you got to think, the average Israelite was probably about 5 foot to 5'3", and Saul stood head and shoulders above them. And so he tries to give him his armor, and he said, look, I can't use this. I haven't tested them. Basically, I haven't trained in them. I don't know how to use them. And they were probably too big for him. He said, he girded the sword on after having all the armor, and it didn't work. And so he took it off. He took it off, and he went down to the creek. He picked up 5 stones, smooth stones, put them in his bag, and he heads out to fight Goliath. And so as he's going, and this Philistine comes out, I love this story right here. So if you have your Bible open, it's in verse 41. It says, the Philistine came and approached David with a shield bearer in front of him. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he had disdain for him, for he was but a youth, a ruddy with a handsome appearance. He was this little guy. He wasn't what you expected in a champion. The Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you would come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine also said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds and of the sky and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, and I want you to get this. This battle that's about to take place, David's speech right here is longer than how long the battle took. And so his battle right here, David says to the Philistine, you come to me with sword, a spear, a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have taunted. This day the Lord will deliver you up into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you, and I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines, so not just Goliath, but the armies of the Philistines, this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. Not my hands, but our hands. It says, then it happened. Philistine rose up, and he came and he drew towards David, and it said that David ran towards him, and he grabbed the stone in his bag. He had it in the sling, and it said they slung that stone, and the stone embedded, sunk into the skull of Goliath, and Goliath fell to the ground, face down. And then David goes over there to Goliath. And he does what he says. He goes, I'm going to take your head. And so he pulls, I'm sure it's a lot bigger than this sword, but he pulls Goliath's sword from the sheath. And he takes it, I'm sure, with probably both hands, all that he could probably muster up. I'm thinking he might have been back here doing all he can to get that sword up, how big Goliath was. And he brings it down, and he chops off Goliath's head. Totally taken off. And at that moment, it says that the Philistines fled in fear. They scurried. They were scared to death. They just saw this little boy who made a very pointed effort to stay in his speech. 7 times he referenced the Lord. That this was God's battle. And then God delivered. And he held that head up. And they fled and ran away. And at that moment, the Israel army, they were rejuvenated, empowered. They see their champion as the victor. Their champion, the one that had come in between, the man between, that had taken on the battle for them, who had gone out there on their behalf and won the victory on their behalf, but now they get a share in that victory. And they go and they chase after the Philistines. And they take out the Philistines all the way to Ekron and Gath. And then they come back and they plunder the tents and they have their reward. David takes the armor of Goliath, puts it in his tent. He takes that head as a trophy back to Jerusalem. And for us guys, this story is, we're like, man, this is awesome. We love a story like that. Now, I don't know, women, y'all might not be so gruesome as us guys are. But us guys, I don't know, we like action movies. I grew up watching action movies where I liked, watching shows with Chuck Norris in it and some of these other guys, Rambo and stuff. Those are my childhood story guys that I watched. And they were the hero. They were the guy going out there that was all in the action, and they were taking care of everything that was needed to take care of. They were defeating the bad guy. And we like to put ourselves or identify ourselves with that hero. We like to put ourselves in that story. And for some, there's something about it for us guys that we want to be the hero ourselves. We want to be the hero for our family. We want to be the hero at our church. We want to be that hero. And so when we hear this story of David and Goliath, we're like, yes, this is awesome. Man, he just cut off his head. That is so awesome. And he's the hero. And we want to say, yes, I identify. I want to be David. And I'm going to go fight those giants. I'm going to kill Goliath. But here's the thing. We identify with the hero, the champion of the story. But the problem is that so often we've heard it taught that way. And we're given this pump-up speech that, hey, you got this. All you have to do is have faith, trust, and courage, and you can defeat Goliath. You can defeat Goliath. You just got to have faith and courage. And we get this pump-up speech, and we're like, oh, yeah. But life happens. Fear, discouragement, anxiety, sin, doubt, lust, addictions. The thing you swore that you would never do again, and you did it again. They happen. And when that does, we find ourselves feeling smaller and smaller. We feel worthless. We feel afraid. We feel terrified. And we find ourselves laid out before the might of this giant that we face in our life. For many of us, a pump-up speech just doesn't work. A pump-up speech doesn't get us out there because our fears are so real. And frankly, we're a lot like Israel. We see the giant. And we come into a room and we scream the battle cry, yeah, we got this, we got this. But as soon as we are assaulted by our giant, we cower and run in fear, just like the Israelites. And that's the point of this story, really. We're not like David. We're like Israel. You know, there might be 100 enemies in our life that we can conquer. There's 100 different enemies in our life that we can conquer, but there are some that we can't seem to win. There's some battles that they seem too hard for us. And in the middle of our sin and our depravity, God does not send a pump-up speech. David is not there to get the Israelites to believe in themselves. You can do it, guys. It's not what he's there for. God does not send a cheerleader. He sends a champion. He sends someone to be that man in between. A man who goes in between. One that says, I will step out for you, that I will fight the fight for you, that I will do what you can't do, that my victory will count for you. We don't need a pump-up speech. We need a champion to fight for us. And here's the reality. Your big fear, whatever it is not Goliath. Whatever fear, whatever thing that you're struggling, your biggest fear is not Goliath. It's a Philistine. Now, granted, Philistines can be scary, and it can be a hard battle. But it's a little Philistine. It's a little brother, it's a little cousin, it's a little nephew of what the big enemy is, which is death. Goliath is death. Death takes it all. It takes your hopes, it takes your dreams, it takes your friendships, your loves, your talents. It takes it all and it gives nothing back. We are powerless in the face of death. And once again, this is the point. In our helplessness, God sent another boy from Bethlehem. He came from an obscure town, but there was greatness in him. He arrived lowly, and he did not look like what you would expect. Philippians 2:6-7 says, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God, but a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking on a form of a bondservant, and being made in the likeness of men. He did not come in the way that we would expect. You know, he too was rejected by his brothers. He looked weak. He was beaten. He was mocked. He was crucified. He wasn't wearing armor. He looked small, but he won. Not in spite of his weakness, but because of his weakness. Hebrews 2:14 says, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise also partook of the same, so that through death he might destroy the one who has power over death. That is the devil, and free those who through fear of death were subject to slavery all their lives. He took the very sword that was meant to kill you. Goliath's sword was meant to kill them, to slay them. But it was Goliath's sword that killed him, that cut off his head. So he says, he took the very sword. Jesus took the very sword that was meant to kill you, and he used it to chop off death's head. For by his death, he defeated death. The death that was coming for you, he said, I will use it as a doorway into victory for you if you trust in me. And what I accomplish on that day will be imputed to you if you trust in me. And my victory will count for you if you trust in me. You know, that's the gospel. It's not clean yourself up and try to figure it out, and maybe God will accept you. It's that he's taking care of it all. And here's the thing, is that we got to do this. We got to admit that we don't have it all together. We don't have it all together, and that, you know what, we got to admit that we need help. And most of all, we have to fix our eyes on the King, on the anointed King, the champion, the one who came in between for us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we also have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding, let us rid ourselves of every obstacle and this sin which so easily entangles us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." How? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of God on the throne of God. For consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. The giants, the things that we're facing in our life that easily entangles us, he says, run with endurance. He goes, and fix your eyes on him. Fix your eyes on Jesus. And you will not grow weary and you will not lose heart. You know, and that's what happened when you're faced with these fears and the giants. How do we not lose heart like Saul? How do we not lose heart like the armies of Israel? And we tremble and we get frozen in fear. How do we get past that? We fix our eyes on Jesus. Because of Christ, I have hope and I have a future that no discouragement, no sin, no addiction, no tragedy can take away. So do you. You have a future. If you have trusted in Jesus, you have a future where no discouragement, no sin, no addiction, no tragedy can ever take you away because of what Christ has done. See, we have the power to drive out the Philistines of sin, sadness, and addiction because we fix our eyes on the King who has already won the victory, who has gone on before us, who has prepared the way, who will never leave us, and who will never forsake us. I love how the Amplified Bible says this in 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear, but he has given us a spirit of power and of love and of sound judgment and personal discipline, the abilities that result in a calm and well-balanced mind and self-control." The key is that we got to make sure that we don't focus on the scary dude, the scary sin, the scary addiction, the scary tragedy, the discouraging thoughts. We focus and we fix our eyes on Jesus because he is our champion. He is the one who has come to be the man in between, and his victory is our victory. Let's pray.